Episode 749. Facing the charge of these half-naked players, the guild's encirclement held steady, calmly redirecting their fire for a single AoE. But the charge was a feint. The moment the encirclement's attack triggered, the two teams suddenly pivoted, starting a fresh charge, and they timed it for the exact moment the encirclement had already committed to its attack, with no chance to pull back. It was like a sword thrust straight at a vital point. Only the blade was too dull to kill, but it still managed to carve off a chunk of flesh. The players in the encirclement were instantly hit by an AoE from these two teams, and several of them fell.
Grab the loot! Grab the loot!
Wei Chen roared at the top of his lungs, but with barely any gear on the ground and 20-odd players scrambling for it, there wasn't much dignity to be had. But this mad scramble left the surrounding players stunned. They were all from major guilds, people with status, discipline, and class. This shameless, barefaced behavior was beneath their contempt. In that 1-to-1 ratio, the equipment on the ground was swept clean in an instant. Then Wei Chen let out another roar, and the two teams split left and right, each cutting a gap, forcing their way through the encirclement like stuffing filling into a dumpling. But this time, the guild players' counterattack came swiftly, denying them any easy pickings. A volley of return fire took down several of Wei Chen's people. This is team battle. AoE attacks are everywhere, and survival is just a matter of moments. Even Yi Shu couldn't turn the tide in a situation like this. A level 54 character could only do so much. The skirmish at the edge of Venomfang Marsh didn't last long. It was all but over within minutes. Those 20-odd players fought and cursed until, one by one, they fell. Yes, they kept cursing, and their language was absolutely vile. It was like they were showing off their extraordinary knowledge of the reproductive system. Yet, for all their cursing, there wasn't a shred of real anger in their voices. It was like they just unleashed a devastating skill on an enemy. It felt good. It felt great. The enemy team was finally wiped out, but the guild players couldn't muster a shred of joy. The enemies they'd killed didn't carry that usual bitterness or regret of the fallen. Instead, they were brimming with the thrill of battle, shouting things like "wash up and wait for me" as they died, a taunt that made the guild players feel utterly insulted. They all exchanged blank looks, unable to muster even a shred of joy for a long while. Just then, a system announcement rang out for the Samsara Guild. "Kill the Swamp Hunter Reap? Samsara Guild? What's going on?" The guild leaders who saw this message were all stunned. Hadn't the Marsh Hunter Reap been stolen by Lord Grimm's group? At the exit of the Poison Fang Marsh, they finally cornered that group. They didn't manage to catch Lord Grimm, but they did gain the upper hand in the confrontation. But then why is it Samsara Guild that shows up as the one who killed the Swamp Hunter Rip? Before anyone could even process what had happened, a sudden wave of follow-up posts with solid proof appeared across all the major Glory forums. This follow-up mainly covered two things. First, the Blue Brook Guild that got mocked and looked down on last time. That was actually a misunderstanding. The real culprit was that guild pest roaming between the 10th server and Heavenly Domain Lord Grimm and his accomplices. Once the truth was uncovered, Blue Brook Guild helped Samsara Guild reclaim the boss and, honoring their posted pledge, handed it over to Samsara for the kill. The second matter was about Samsara taking a stand. Even if the boss wasn't the prize, their pride was non-negotiable. The Blue Creek Pavilion incident had been cleared up as a misunderstanding, but when faced with a situation like this, Samsara would never back down. "The Jia dynasty wants to exploit our weakness. Fine, then we fight. Samsara will never compromise for any reason. Faced with any hardship, they will kill their way to a path forward, kill their way to a breath of relief." There were videos and screenshots to prove both incidents. The video and images captured it all. Members of the Jia Dynasty Guild, beneath the proud, unyielding stance of Samsara Guild's players, stooping or crouching to pick up their dropped equipment before slinking away.
Hey, didn't you say you didn't quite get this trade? You get it now?
Yi Shu was explaining this to Chen Guo beside him. She was completely stunned, not quite grasping it fully. but after reading through the flood of replies in those 2 follow-up posts, things started to click. Blue Brook Guild's move was largely forced. With that public post as proof, even though the other guilds knew full well it wasn't Blue Brook's doing, they had no qualms about slinging that mud as long as there was no hard evidence to clear them. This kind of attack carries far more weight than a simple PK in the game. Guilds like theirs had club teams backing them. That trinity of existence made it nearly impossible to crush them through brute force tactics like PK. Exploiting such an opportunity to expose their scandal could fundamentally undermine the Trinity's popularity, a powerful strike in the competition. The Blue Brook Guild clearly understood this. Their primary goal with this move was to whitewash their image, firmly denying other guilds any chance for a powerful attack. It was truly a move born of necessity. As for Samsara Guild, Chen Guo saw a string of their fans in the comments shouting about how cool and badass they were, and even plenty of other players praising Samsara for being real men. Chen Guo realized immediately that Samsara's move was at least somewhat deliberate. Ordinary players playing online games, how could they ever manage and scheme the way these club guilds did? Today, Samsara first played the victim to win sympathy, then turned to battle to demand justice. To other guilds, this looked like brainless thuggery, but it struck a chord with a huge chunk of the player base. These players just want a thrill. If they get screwed over, they don't want to hear about some long-term plan. They want revenge right then and there. Whether they can actually get it is another story. And Samsara's move this time, it hit the mark with those players. Not only did it ignite the passion of their own supporters, but even plenty of neutral fence-sitting types who had no particular preference found their opinion of Samsara rising as a result. And the fact that Samsara actually snatched the boss back in the end, that was straight out of a power fantasy novel, the protagonist decisive and ruthless, ultimately seizing what he needed through sheer force. In the player's eyes, that was one word: satisfying.